Cloud. So good morning. This is our March 13th SIG CLI meeting. I'm Sean Sullivan, and I'll be organizing our meeting today. Thanks to Juan Vallejo for being our note taker. So we'll start with a couple of announcements. Maciej put the first announcement on, which is that the SIG CLI will be adopting Crew, the Crew plugin manager. Does Amit or Maciej have anything to add to this?
I'm here, but I don't have anything to add. I think we're going to probably start the transfer process soon.
Excellent.
Yep, same for me. I'm happy to have Crew on board of the SIG CLI and be able to solve the plugin management issue that we somehow left out from the initial plugin proposal purposefully. I'm very happy to see the Crew pick the topic, addressed it perfectly, found appropriate community around it, builds a community around it, and there's a lot of people that are actually interested in helping and developing further Crew.
So are we going to donate Crew then to the SIG CLI or sorry, the Kubernetes SIGs? Is that where the repo is going to go?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Okay, excellent. I put another announcement on there just to remind everybody that our code freeze started last Thursday on the 7th. So if you didn't get your code in, there's not a very good chance that you're going to get it in now. So as far as the test grid, so I was on call this last 2 weeks, and the test grid was actually very quiet, except for one test that's Google specific in GKE. I know that Maciej is going to be moving into this position going forward, but I'll keep working on this Google specific test as we go forward.
Okay, thanks for the heads up.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get to our topics today. So do we have Nick Mitchell to talk about the cool looking CUI project?
Here.
Okay, should I'll tell you what, I'll allow you to share your screen. Is that Nick? Did I hear you?
I'm here, yeah.
Okay, I'll stop sharing my screen. If I could figure out how to do that. Right there.
Okay.
It's all yours, Nick.
Great, thank you. Got it? Can you see the screen now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I talked a bit about CUI, I think, in the past, but figured I'd spend about a minute or so just giving a bit of the sort of backstory and what the goals are of this little project we've been endeavoring on. And then I'll go right into just what's new, sort of getting you through a live demo of what it can do that you didn't see before, all that kind of stuff. So just as a bit of the backstory, just do this really quickly. So the goal is to, I think we all realize the value of CLIs, given the topic of SIG. But I think it's a pretty valuable part of the whole dev experience with the cloud. But at the same time, because of the asynchronous nature, again, the deeply nested and complex relational nature of all the data types we're working with, some graphics help sometimes. So the question is, can we give this sort of fluid transition between the steady state terminal mode and graphics? And so I'm just giving some examples of the kinds of graphics that might be helpful, from the banal tables that we can decorate with and make clickable, so we're not copying and pasting all the time. And as we go then to the more deep actual true visualizations, as you see on the lower right. So the question is, how can we architect it so that we can allow for that without forcing people into a a real graphical monolith where they have to really change their workflows and change their habits and change the way they credential and log in and all that stuff. And so that's the basic goal. So the realization we had is that Electron, I think, is a pretty nice technology vehicle. It's demonstrated by quite a few other high-profile projects, which you're probably all aware of. It would be a good vehicle for allowing for this. So the idea is using Electron as our foundation for delivering these graphics. We can offer our developers a couple of different modes of operation. I think this flexibility is a key part to the value proposition here. In the demo that I'll get to in a second, I'll show you a couple of these modes. The first is, I call it the pop-up mode. The idea is I want to stay in my terminal. I love my terminal. My favorite is ZSH or Bash and like iTerm, whatever it is. I'm very happy with that environment. But every once in a while, I want to, at my direction, make a foray into graphical world. I just want a quick pop-up so I can see, oh, does it look right? Close the pop-up, and I'm out of graphical world quickly. So that kind of run and done pop-ups is the first main mode that we've been targeting. The second is that we can then think about how we can further extend this experience with a more deep terminal replacement. And I'll show a bit of that as well. If we're thinking about this more of a terminal replacement rather than a pop-up kind of experience, we can think about really crafting a real kind of more deep navigational experience where I'm navigating through the data structures, going back, looking at views, and really making it more navigational as opposed to this pop-up. I won't talk about the third one today, but just to mention it, that because it's all a web app, we have the option of running this in a browser, and we're actually have explored that in some other directions. And there's some interesting work there as well, but I won't talk about that today. And just quickly mention that there's, I think that the options I think for us are wide open after that. We thought about maybe adding a VS Code plugin to have a replacement, drop-in replacement for the terminal that runs in VS Code, but instead of being an ASCII terminal, it can be a graphical terminal. But then when they click on a link, it'll open up the YAML in the VS Code editor. So I think we can explore all kinds of possibilities of integration based on this core we have. So just a quick list of the new and notable stuff, if you remember, in case you can sort of get a sense of the progress we've made over the past 6 weeks or so. We have the ability now to, in a pretty flexible way, do custom client builds. So you can external to the main CUI repo, you can have your own repo that picks and chooses the core plugins you want. You can write your own plugins. You can graft on your own theme, including colors and icons and all that. That support is pretty stable. In fact, we have a startup. Nimbella is actually exploring this. They've actually been using CUI in this kind of custom client mode to craft their own client for their technologies. We have some initial theming support that I'll show you quickly as we go through the live demo, and a bunch of extensions basically to the Kube workflow. So let me get to the live demo post-haste. So I'll step through a couple of these scenarios, and hopefully I'll show you some of the new stuff and some of the old stuff as we go. So the idea is that, so here's kubectl, and we have a CUI simple plugin, it's nothing really, on top of it. And so the idea is that I'm using kubectl or kubectl CUI in ASCII art mode, and it works just as I expect, just fine. I can use that unadulterated. If I want to answer the same question, what are my pods, but in a graphical mode, the idea is that I can just append a short little qualifier to the command. And instead of seeing it in ASCII art mode, I can see it in graphical mode. And this window pops up, I can resize it, and we sort of crafted it so that in this kind of pop-up mode, there's no command line there, there's no interactivity other than the view you asked for. But now that it's graphical, we can actually think about doing some bits that we wouldn't have thought about doing in ASCII art mode pretty easily. So I can click on some of these links, and we'll be transitioned to the details of what's going on there. So here's sort of the describe level perspective on that pod, that Nginx pod that I was asking about. But you can see on the lower part, we have a bunch of tabs that I can sort of cycle through. to get different perspectives on that same data. So so I can switch to see the full get level YAML if I'd like. This is all based on the Monaco editor, so it's basically the same layout you'd see in VS Code for that matter. But we can offer some other kind of modal kind of context switch views that give you different lenses into the data. So the summary, describe level information, and the raw get level information are just two of the lenses we might think about exploring to look at how we lens over the raw information. So we've explored a couple of these. This is all just sort of just demonstration vehicles. But so you can see here, I clicked on the containers tab, and here I now have the same table I was sort of seeing at the top level, but now focused on the containers underneath this. In this case, I was looking at a pause. I thought there's one simple container underneath this. I can navigate further down into the logs for the container by clicking. There's no logs here, so there's nothing really interesting to show. There's no logs for this containers, nothing interesting. But the idea is I can sort of navigate now very quickly to answer questions. And I think that's one of the things that I've discovered with Kube is not only is it asynchronous and the complex interrelations, but even if you want to stick in your ASCII or terminal, which I want to do as well as anybody, sometimes you ask a question that you think might need some graphical help. And then while you're there, you can sort of amend and explore the data a little bit within that local confines of the question that you're asking. What does it satisfy pod? Well, the natural next step is what are the logs for the containers? So hopefully we can allow for that kind of quick transitions even within pop-up. So that's the first style. Second style is we can open up the full terminal replacement site. So it's basically the same basic experience, but now I have an actual command line. I can list the directories in my file system. I can now I can treat it more like a terminal, and all the same interactions I was working with before give me the same basic experience. Although in this case we've done the Windows split mode in this case because we think it might be helpful to see the focus and context. So I can flip between, for example, in this case, the different pods I might have, and I can quickly with one click, I can sort of cycle through all of the pods that I might have to pull in. So that's the basics of the terminal, the more sort of terminal replacement experience. Quickly, just themes. We thought this is a helpful part of just helping us solidify the foundation to make sure all of the CSS is fairly well architected. But also, it's kind of fun. So, we have that in place as well. The next step I'll show you quickly is we have some initial work with integrating with Istio and Chiali. It's pretty preliminary, but so one of the parts of CUI that you can do pretty flexibly is that plugins can enrich the command tree in the same way that you would sort of do a mount in a Unix file system. You can sort of override or enrich the command structure of an existing tree just by plugging in new commands. So in this case, get apps. This may not be an existing command. This is really just for demo purposes, but I can do that. Now I can see in this case, I'm showing, pulling out the data from Chiali directly. This is actually querying the Chiali API to get its app list model, and then each of the cells there is actually the app health API. But because we're in a terminal as opposed to a really monolithic custom designed UI, I can do all the stuff I would think about doing in the CLI. If I wanted to, for example, change interval. So if I want to change the interval, I can do that just by adding a different query param to the command line. As you can see in this case, the data fills in, and I have two different tables, and I'm getting a tabular graphical kind of view but with the terminal experience where I can add options. I can very flexibly craft what I want to see from the sampling of filtering and or time slicing, anything like that. This little icon here, we have some initial work that integrates with REC, the WRK load tester. This is really just to show you the flexibility and power you might have here. this starts up a load test. It takes a while for it to ramp up. So I'll just leave it running in the background. So any questions? I think I can leave it there, sort of running just in case to get to other topics. But that's the basic summary of where we are.
There's a question in the chat.
Oh. Can somebody, or
Yeah, it's how does auth against the cluster work? Are we just going to pick up kubeconfig?
yeah. So yeah, so the way it works today is that if you're running in these kind of local modes, the Webpack mode is of course a completely different story, but if you're running local mode, what we do is we actually listen to your kubeconfig, and we actually have a little bit of a command that wraps on top of the kubectl config get contexts, just to pre-print it a little bit. So you can see here we have all the contexts I have available. I have one AWS cluster, I have a couple of IBM ones, there's an IBM Cloud Private one, and then I can flip between these. So I was in my Dev2 cluster, I can click, and now I've switched to my Cloud Shell CI cluster, and I have to do kget pods. I don't think I have anything there. And now I can flip back to the Dev. So that's the start of where we are. I think we can probably go much further with that. For example, I know that each cloud provider is going to have the integration story, how you integrate the cloud provider's notion of clusters with the kube config notion of that definition. And so maybe we could even offer on a per provider basis the ability for the providers to offer when I type context, maybe if I don't have kube config variable defined, we can query the underlying providers APIs to pull out that information. We haven't done that yet, but that's a possibility.
There's someone in the community working on something that might be interesting to you around clusters, targeting clusters. They're trying to figure out the answer from a declarative angle. Like how do we, in resource config, allow resources to be targeted to clusters? But they're trying to think through some of the issues of like, can someone put a DNS address in there and then we just figure it out without a kubeconfig or sparse kubeconfigs or that sort of thing?
Yeah, okay. Do you have any pointers to that, or?
Yeah, it's Antoine Polisi,
Okay.
and I'll send an email to I'll put in the notes actually, the SIG CLI meeting notes.
Great, thank you.
Nick, I had a quick question about what are the plans for CUI? Is the code going to be open sourced? What are your hopes for working with SIG CLI?
So we yeah, so I think so it's already, firstly let me switch to the our GitHub repo. So we've already open sourced it underneath the IBM org. It's
Okay.
Apache 2 license, and I think we are under no illusions that being underneath the IBM org is not the right place to be. I don't think it's going to get us any contributors, and so I think on our end we're happy to shift this to another org, but that's that require larger discussions. But yeah, our hope is that. Yeah, that we can make this a bigger venture.
That's a great question. I think we need to figure out maybe where we want to build these sorts of things that are clearly going to be driven by the Kubernetes community and part of and tightly coupled with Kubernetes project tooling. If the Kubernetes SIGs is the right project for us to collaborate in, or if Kubernetes SIGs is not the right organization for us to collaborate in, where is a place that allows us to develop tools and different awesome projects that might fall outside the scope of the project based on kind of the original idea of the architecture. And so we don't want maybe SIG release, for instance, to feel like that these ever have to be on their radar, or like SIG PM or this sort of thing. But at the same time, like it gives a spot for us, members of the Kubernetes community and everyone else to collaborate on these.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to figure that out, because that's come up actually before. I think Crew kind of is loosely is kind of walks the edge on that one, where it was developed outside originally. Kui, I view Crew and Kui maybe very similarly in that aspect.
Yeah, we're happy. I mean, happy to participate and help out however we can. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's like kind of a longer term thing too, right? Like, it looks like you guys are making great progress, and I don't want to. I think trying to switch orgs right now would probably slow you guys down. But knowing that that's something you're open to is really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Actually, this is Paul. I work with Nick. Yeah, we're actually hoping that if we did switch orgs, that would actually accelerate things. As Nick said, one of our goals would really to try to get people interested in this and get outside committers. So as Nick said, if we could figure out the right place for this, we would really see that as beneficial.
Yeah, totally. You're gonna say, Sean?
I was just saying that's really I think that's really cool that you're open to that type of reorganization.
Yeah, we definitely want this to be Kubernetes community driven.
Cool. Well, thanks for your time, and let's move on now to the next topic, which is for Jingfeng, who has a PR that she wants to talk about. Are you here, Jingfeng?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so this PR is a change in Kubernetes website repo. So the change there is targeting 1.14 release. So once it is released, the change will be shown on kas.io for the website docs. And the main purpose of my PR is to reflect the customized integration in kubectl. I added a new page in one of the sessions for kubectl. The new page I added is to how to manage the objects, how to manage the resources using customize in kubectl. And there I listed all the features in customize and gave main description like how you want to use this field. Also for each of the field, I gave a simple example. And besides the new page added, I also did some other changes. One of the change is to change kubectl create -f to kubectl apply -f, since we want to recommend user to using apply more when they want to apply from files or directories. And yeah, I think that's the major changes in that PR. And the deadline for the deadline for reviews should be next Monday. So please feel free to take a look and leave your comments there. If I need to do further, like revising the phrases or fix any typos, I hope that we can have all of things done by this Friday or by the end of this week. Yeah, that's all.
Okay, great. So I think that thanks, Jingfeng. I think that the next couple items are on Phil's plate. You're here, Phil?
Yeah, I'm here. Okay, yeah, just a quick, these are things we've discussed in the past, but they haven't been resolved yet, so I thought I'd bring them up. The first is the docs freeze is on 3/18, which is next Monday, or it's less than a week away. The docs are now published at kucontrol.docs.kubernetes.io, and so we are going to link to those docs from the main site. This is kind of your last chance to make sure these opinions reflect what you believe the community and project stance on the way users should be engaging with our tooling are. There is some stuff in here that's new. So some of the sections like printing and debugging are mostly copied from the existing docs site and kind of reformatted and rephrased, but the philosophy and intention hasn't been altered. Some of the sections are basically copied from the customized documentation. Again, the wording's changed, but the philosophy and intention is not altered. A couple sections, if you want to scroll down on the left-hand nav there, Sean, specifically the app composition and deployment selections does contain stuff that is new in this document and hasn't been documented anywhere else yet. In my update, I call these structure sections alpha. And if you want to click on like the structure branches, for instance, Sean, yeah. Right, so it says this is kind of being evaluated. But these are ways to effectively lay out resource config in using Git or directory structures or these sorts of things. And there's some opinions in here that we've found to be very successful in Google in terms of providing a structure around where resource config goes for environments or for specific clusters or for specific apps and these sorts of things. If you want to scroll down even a little further, you can see kind of the examples. This is an example, right? And so this is using customize effectively to tell users how to create basically the base versions of their applications and then customize specific flags and specific like fields such as the resource allocations and replica count and this sort of thing for specific deployment targets and environments. So I'm still on the fence about whether to include this stuff in the first iteration. I think it's a discussion that's happening now, and it'd be really great to have users aware of the way that we've discussed it in some of the conversations that I've had, and kind of the latest thinking about how we view it and how we're building our tools towards supporting. So I'd like to be able to put that in their hands early. On the other hand, unlike most of the other stuff here, we don't have a lot of feedback on customers using this stuff in production. For directory structure, we do have quite a bit. For the repo repositories, I think we have enough understanding of that. The branches specifically, we probably have less. I think the concepts are probably pretty, there's nothing radical in here. I think certain decisions could be made differently, but this isn't like completely something totally new. It's Git branches and just kind of different ways of allowing code config changes to be committed at different times for different purposes. Anyway, so that's a long-winded way of saying if you think of yourself as an expert or an owner or responsible for this area, this is what we're going to be telling our users to do. You probably want to take a look and make sure that your opinions are being represented here. And again, this is immediate. The freeze is Monday for docs. So, I mean, this actually doesn't, we're kind of, we can change this at any time kind of because we're publishing it ourselves using Netlify. But the release is coming up really quick, I think on the 25th. So, and I'd like to have it all settled by the 18th. The second piece is just, I have a number of KEPs out. Lately I've been trying to publish feature ideas when users are asking for features or saying this is broken or that's not working for them or various things. I try and write down my ideas of kind of how one might solve that, how we might solve it in the simplest possible way, throw them in a KEP, call it provisional, don't put in the alternatives in. And my hope has been that the rest of the community and other people responsible for these areas can then give them a skeleton to comment on, and they can say this is a bad idea and why it won't work, and say here's the alternatives that I'd rather have, right? Because it's instead of just asking for people to solve problems, I've found that soliciting feedback by giving your own ideas is pretty effective. So that's the context of why you've seen me maybe open 5 or 6 KEPs in the last week, is to kind of facilitate that workflow. This KEP with the headers is actually one I would like to see get merged, because I think this one's important for us to have more observability. There's a couple things I think that are going to be possibly quite valuable here. One is adding a header for deprecation on kubectl commands. When the kubectl sends a request from a command that's deprecated, adding a header for that. And if we can get the API server to enable logging that in place, so then cluster admins can, you can think of an organization that's running its own clusters, for instance, or installing kubectl on users' workstations, or managing its own deployment environment, right? Then you can see are you using deprecated commands before you upgrade kubectl, right? And so instead of us kind of being afraid, like, oh no, if we move this command, who are going to break? We have no idea, and users aren't going to pay any attention. We have that tool. There's other kind of stuff in there I think would be useful for everyone. Ideally, folks could see how users are interacting with their clusters. That means maybe they can bring that information back to us and say, here's what people are using in kubectl. Here's roughly how users are interacting with their systems. Now you know where to focus your energy to help us. The other piece is it helps people that maybe run their own clusters understand how users are interacting with the system, so they know what tools they need to build themselves. Companies like Airbnb and a number of other companies I talked to, at least 3 or 4, all end up wrapping kubectl and building their own tools and forking it and taking the libraries. Folks are really just building their own stuff, it seems like, because bigger companies are building their own stuff that's really custom tailored to what their needs are, using kubectl as a foundation for that. And so giving them the ability to see like what people are doing maybe allows them to better invest in their own tools. So we'll have to work with API machinery actually to make sure this stuff gets logged in a sane fashion that is discoverable and can be pulled into analytic systems. Then users can decide, cluster administrators could decide to then take the data they own and put in systems that allows them to view it. So we'd have to also engage with them on that. But I'd like to. The KEP's been out for about a week or 2 weeks. Hasn't really seen any comments since. It had a lot of great comments initially. I addressed all of them, and I haven't really heard a whole lot since. So if we could maybe start releasing on that, would be great.
Okay, thanks, Phil. So I guess we'll move on to stand-ups, and I'll give a quick, very quick overview of what's been going on with kubectl independence. And for those of you who aren't familiar with this phrase, we're basically, this is the effort to move kubectl out of Kubernetes core and into its own repository under Kubernetes kubectl. And unfortunately, we really haven't been able to do too much in the course of the last quarter. Right now, Juan has a PR out in order to get rid of a particular dependency on RBAC, a particular core Kubernetes dependency. We have about 14 or 15 imports that we need to get rid of, and I think it's going to be a renewed effort this coming up 1.15 release. Okay, do we have any other stand-ups?
So I guess I can add some more to the, I guess, to the current PR.
Sure.
So ideally we were originally trying to see if we could land that PR before code freeze. However, I think rightfully so, Jordan thought that such great amount of code duplication and otherwise just large amount of changes could maybe essentially sit for a little longer, just to make sure we're all okay with what is in essence just a large portion of code duplication from the core repo into the kube control subtree. And so I guess feedback's appreciated on that, definitely. Also, if you take a look at that PR right now, we mainly just duplicate everything, including generated code, which I think we could do without, especially if we, if we're pretty adamant on seeing this sort of code duplication as a, as a band-aid until we're able to actually split the kube control repo out.
Cool. Thanks, Juan. Okay, so I think
I just add that I totally think Jordan's right on that. The code, since it's a pure refactoring, it doesn't need to go in the release, but it can introduce risk into the release, but it won't add any value. So thanks for your patience, Juan, and waiting for that to get merged.
No problem.
Maybe add some light into it. Jordan is not opposed per se on the PR. He just forces us to think a little bit deeper through the functionality, how we can maybe somehow come up with a better solution instead of just copying the functionality, because that is the first that came to our minds. And apparently the biggest issue, and I think that's probably one of the last big items that we need to address for the kubectl independence, because for others, it is just a matter of fixing the imports, changing from internal types to external types, where this particular one is literally reusing a significant amount of code for auth command, and we just need to figure out if there is a better way to do it.
So I'd say also on that note, not saying this could be a particularly better way, but another way we sort of considered doing this in the past was through the use of plugins. So maybe we could probably bring the discussion up again of making reconcile, or even just the auth subtree a plugin.
The thing with auth reconcile is that it should not be any more needed, because the code for the auth should handle the reconciliation. If I remember correctly, that was introduced some time ago. But the problem is that we have the command. We haven't deprecated it. Maybe deprecating it will be a solution towards externalizing it and making it actually a plugin. We'll have to do similar thing for the kubectl convert at some point in time, because that is one of the commands that will have to stay in the main Kubernetes repo. And the reason for that, it is relying on the internals for the conversions. And we cannot, or rather, we don't want to have the internals inside of the kubectl repo, because internals exist only within Kubernetes repo.
Yeah, the convert, we've put in a deprecation message for convert, I think back in 1.13. So we may have more scope to for changes to convert as we go forward in 1.15.
Oh, cool. Maybe I missed that one.
Yeah, I'll have a look at that again. Okay, so I guess that's just about it for for our meeting today. Does anybody have anything else that they'd like to discuss that's not on the agenda? Okay, I'll take that as a no. Please have a look at the attendees list at the bottom here and add your name. It looks like there's quite a few people who haven't been added to the attendees list. And that's going to be just about it.
Oh, one last thing.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Just one last thing is, I just want to make sure that everyone knows we didn't drop the ball on figuring out updating the owner's files. It's just taking the backseat to the docs and a couple other things that have deadlines that are coming up in shortly. But we didn't forget about that, and we're going to continue to make sure that happens.
Yep. So look forward to that. Kubectl owners is going to be modified. Okay.
Also, one last thing, I guess. This is Ahmed. Do we know who's the admin for Kubernetes SIG org so we can do the transfer? I think there's like there needs to be handoff from both sides over like some email that comes from GitHub, right? Yeah, yes.
I'm hoping Phil knows the answer to that.
You file it. There's a process. I can try and figure it out. But you file an issue, and then Maciej and I, either Maciej or I, need to approve that. This is the process.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool. Well, I'll give you about 15 minutes back. Have a good week, everybody.
Thanks for hosting, Sean.
Yep.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thanks, Sean.